Hello everyone, checking in on the major cryptocurrency space, and a reminder again, we're going to be posting content on STEEMIT.com from now on, and we're going to be doing some exclusive content there as well as we get progressing. So definitely trying to get some of the cryptocurrency community to transition over to that space to give it a shot. Can't hurt. So let's start it off with Bitcoin, and we're going to start it off with all daily time frames to see where we stand. So what we have playing out on Bitcoin at least is our all-time high, low of the pullback, lower high, higher low. So again, it's this equilibrium pattern that happens on all time frames that we've been watching for the past 2 months and been capitalizing on when we see clear breaks of this pattern occurring. Usually it's been happening on the shorter term time frames. Now we have a longer term one to be watching. What this means is we're going to see volume drop off, and we're going to see this pattern continue to tighten until it gives us a very clear break. So what I would be watching when I would be looking at this chart is I would be looking at the most recent higher low and lower high as key levels. So I'm looking down at 2258 key support, and key resistance is up at 2777. And along with that, I would draw some trend lines to be watching a tightening range that we do have forming. And it looks like we're grinding right along this downtrend resistance right now. So that's where I would put that downtrend resistance line. And it actually looks like we could draw a horizontal support line here rather than a trend line, which would be better suited. And let's do that. We're going to put that right at the lows, making sure no candlestick has closed below it. So the way that we currently stand, we can see we're pretty much right at this downtrend resistance line. And we have this base of support formed. We have the higher low where the lower wicks have dipped below. So this is normal, healthy consolidation that's going on right now. And it does favor the bulls, I would say, overall. Number one, because the volume. You see the volume is dropping off. It's declining bear volume. That's a good sign. Number two, we're seeing lower wicks of bulls buying the dip rather than upper wicks showing profit taking. So where we currently stand here, if I had to guess, and usually on these equilibrium patterns, I don't. I wait for the break of the pattern to make a clear trade. And that's in the past 24 hours, I haven't really been placing any trades because I know we've been consolidating. And I know that if I am trying to trade during the consolidation, the moves are going to be smaller. They're going to be harder to eke out some profit. And there has been some opportunity. I did make some ETH trades I'll point out in just a minute. But other than that, I'm being very, very patient here and actually going away for the next 36 hours. So hopefully we stay consolidating during that time. But I would not be surprised to see a clear break this weekend from these tightening patterns. So I would anticipate a bullish move just because of the way that this consolidation on the daily time frame is going. And then we zoom in on the hourly time frame to get more details to say, okay, what's it going to take for the bulls to turn things around? So we have shifted. We saw the top out where we hit our high, then we started to set the lower lows, lower high, lower low. So that's the current pattern that the hourly time frame is in. Lower highs and lower lows, but it's not significantly bearish because seeing how much we've given back, if I were looking for supports here on the hourly time frame, I'd put a low down here at this consolidation. We're holding that level right now. There's another low just above it that we're currently still holding as well. So again, it's not significant pullback. This is healthy consolidation at this time as far as I'm concerned. If we see spikes in volume and significant downside moves through these supports, this is actually a really important support because if it does break, we did not establish much support on the way up from the bounce otherwise. So this is actually a very important level that I would be watching of 2457. If that were to break, that would be a red flag in the short term for the bulls. So in terms of resistance, our lower highs are very clear. Where we keep setting lower highs, I've got a resistance level right here on the hourly. The last bounce attempt, we topped out at 2550, we can call it. Just set another lower high here at 2530. But that's a more recent lower high. I would really be looking at 2550. If that level breaks, that's a bullish break. And we would be looking back to recent highs and looking to continue the bullish bounce that is occurring on the daily time frame. So pretty much the most important range that I'm watching right now is support of 2467 and 2550 resistance. That's the channel that we are currently in. There's bounces to be had. We see oversold bounces on this consolidation have been playing out, at least on Ethereum. They've been playing out on the 15-minute time frame, and it looks like Bitcoin's the same. So look here on these pullbacks and look at the RSI. We dip right at 30. We see a bounce for an hour and 15 minutes. We dip just below 30. We see a bounce playing out for a few hours. So I've been using the 15-minute time frame combined with the 5-minute RSI because the 5-minute RSI alone is not as good an indicator as it used to be. But if I look and see the 15-minute time frame oversold as well, that gives me more confidence that the bounce is going to be a bit more prolonged and have a little bit more momentum behind it. So if we look on the 5-minute time frame here and zoom in, and we can see, you know, plenty of times we dip below this RSI and hit oversold and don't really see a quick bounce just yet. But if we look and see 5-minute RSI oversold and we change and look at the 15-minute and see the 15-minute RSI right at 30, that's been the bull signal on this consolidation, at least in the past 24 hours, on when to enter. So it's important to note that things are always shifting, right? So the RSI was a lot more clear on the way up. Now that we're on the way down consolidating, it's a different game. So we have to be able to adjust, notice these patterns, recognize them, and then utilize them for profit until they don't work anymore. So we saw the shift in the 5-minute RSI hitting oversold, being an automatic entry signal and just being an ATM. And now we're looking at the 15-minute RSI as an indication on this consolidation. So that's what we've got on Bitcoin heading into this weekend. And if we cannot break this lower high pattern on the hourly, then obviously the bulls are not really doing anything in terms of changing things around. And again, if we break this low of that consolidation, the bulls are in trouble in the short term. Checking in on ETH, very similar, but here let's start on the daily time frame as well. It's a different pattern because we broke to lower lows. And again, I'm going to exclude this lower wick. I'm just going to be using supports previously and assume that this didn't happen because that flash crash is a bit of a fluke and not really technically sound to be using that level. So the difference with Bitcoin on the daily time frame, where we have that higher low on the daily, very clear, still intact, we do not have that on Ethereum because we broke to a lower low. So that definitely shifts things and changes what we're looking at. So what I'm looking at is our recent low, the low that we hit. That's a very important support, that 206 double bottom that we found. And obviously the high of this bounce is our resistance, and that was up at 323.69. And we were looking for a lower high to form on this daily bounce because that's the pattern that we are in, lower highs and lower lows. So we bounced. We saw the oversold bounce. It went really well. We had a 280 target. We saw some more upside there. I was basing all of my trade and game plan and targets based off this little level right here of 332.95 because that's what I consider a lower high. I have our high, lower low, lower high, pullback, lower high, lower low, and now another lower high compared to that level. So I was absolutely anticipating a lower high compared to 332, make that 333, and it ended up being about $9 below that level. So now we are pulling back, same story. Consolidation is fairly healthy. There's no red flags at this point. It's low bear volume, and I would be looking zoomed in on the hourly time frame for more details on important levels. So I would be looking at this pullback right now and saying, okay, the bulls appear to have set a bit of a low. So the low on this consolidation is definitely an important level going forward. And that level down here is at 283. So 283 is a must hold in the short term. If that breaks, I'm looking down here at 260. And this is the level that pretty much lines up with Bitcoin, where Bitcoin support was that must hold. Because if that breaks, we didn't really establish support on the way up with such a rocket move. And we're well above that level here on Ethereum compared to how close Bitcoin is to that level. So there's more wiggle room for the bulls here. We have a clear lower high pattern still in play. We had this little double top indicating that top, and then this was a very clear pullback signal. So lower highs and lower lows, but we now have a higher low. So things are shifting just a little bit, where 283 was the must hold. Then we formed a higher low at 286. And in terms of the bulls showing up and turning things around, they have to break 306.50 for that to happen to me. Or for me to be a believer in the bulls. And from there, we can just look at back at every time we set a lower high, that's a resistance point. So 313 is another one, 323 is another one, and in terms of support, every time the bulls bought the dip and saw continuation on the move to the upside, that's a support to be keeping an eye on. So the way that we are currently trading, we are in a tightening range. You can see the volume is dropping off. The range is dropping off. Again, I'm not trying to force trades here. It's a good way to just waste time and lose money, in my opinion. There are some opportunities, but more often than not, you're swimming against the stream. You're swimming against the current, and it's harder to trade in this consolidation period. So it's the same story with the 15-minute time frame being a nice indication here on these oversold bounces. You can see the few times that we have bounced on the way down here, RSI dipped pretty well below 30 here, and then we saw multiple hours of upside, dipped to 30. We saw solid upside for hours, and we just did it again, dipped to 30, and saw a couple hours of upside. But you can see the upside each time is getting shorter and shorter in terms of the amount of bullish action that can be captured on that bounce. So really, opportunity is dwindling as we continue to tighten, and we're going to see a clear break of this hourly pattern sometime likely tonight. And again, I won't be here for that, but I will be back tomorrow evening and I'll do a video to catch up and see where we're all at. In terms of setting fishing lines, a lot of people, set low bids and hope that the price dumps and hits that. I'm not going to be doing that while I'm away, just because I like to be in complete control. And the way that I am approaching the space right now as a trader is that the past 2 months have given me incredible profit, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm not going to risk that. Really, anything on top of that is icing on the cake. You could tell me, okay, you're not going to make another dollar in crypto for the rest of the year, and I'd say, okay, that's great. Thanks for playing. See you later. I'm obviously going to keep trying, but I'm just going to be looking to tack on little bits here and there. Obviously, tacking on big bits would be sweet, but I'm going to be very protective of the profit that I have accumulated so far, and anything on top of that is just icing on the cake. And looking long term, absolutely, I'm still interested in longer term positions. I do have a small long term position in ETH and a small long term position in BTC. I'd say compared to the stack that I'm trading with, that's more like 5% almost. Those are just ones to stick under the pillow and completely forget about. But in terms of trading, again, I'm being very, very cautious, and I'm never going to let myself get in a position where, I'm down a significant amount and trying to climb my way back. I will always take that small loss, get out of the trade, get my big chunk of profit back, and just patiently wait for a clear opportunity. So that's why I'm not trading in this space. I did trade this first 15-minute oversold bounce. I guess that was late last night where we bounced here. And I did get in here. A bunch of us in the chat room got into 287s, and then when it bounced and we saw higher lows and higher highs continue, I think I exited around 291. Again, just tacking on a few dollars here and there and building that stack and just being very cautious and patient. So being patient on the consolidation is the highlight of the video. LTC is a completely different setup because of the daily time frame being completely different. So what we have here is our higher low being established. That's the must hold, the low of the pullback. That was down at 33.38. And in terms of resistance, we're looking at the high of the bounce. And that was up at 43.44. So that's the current range that we are in. We're pulling back now. We will likely set a higher low. That might be the higher low here with the low of today. And just watching the range continue to tighten. And we can see that on the hourly time frame. It's a different setup than both Bitcoin and Ethereum because we just broke this higher high. So we set our higher low like Ethereum has, but we set our higher high just now. And that was a break of this lower high pattern. So that's momentum shifting in the favor of LTC. And the hourly time frame, if I had to pick out of the three, which hourly time frame looks the best because we broke that lower high pattern, it is LTC. That being said, the gains that we've seen on the bounce over the past few days, Ethereum was something like over 50%. Bitcoin and Litecoin were significantly less than that. So the most profitable play continues to be Ethereum in terms of percentage gains to the upside. That being said, there is opportunity in all these different spaces depending on what the setup is doing. And again, the correlation is strongest between these names when the volatility and the volume and the action is the strongest. So on periods of consolidation like we're currently seeing, that's when these names can really break apart from each other a bit more significantly than if volume were strong and all the action were going on. When it's low action and low volume, people with smaller amounts of money can have bigger influences on what the price is doing, and that's when we see these names break that correlation a bit, which is why we're seeing LTC make a bullish break of its lower high pattern. So here on LTC, we've got our low of this hourly pullback to be watching. That's down at 39.22. We have another higher low in there to be watching, a support of 39.70. So again, every time we see a low and the bulls say, okay, we're done pulling back, that's a support level. Resistance, we just topped out, it looks like, at 41.20. And the next level up here is 41.99. So hopefully by now you're getting an idea of how I am drawing my levels to be watching and support and resistance levels. And again, I'm not really using trend lines as much as I'm using the actual price action, as I believe that is the most important factor. So LTC, let's see if the bulls can continue this higher low, higher high hourly pattern and recovery. Checking in on Golem, I've been trading Golem a bit more actively just because the volatility has been here as well. And I'm currently in half a position. Actually, I'm not. I'm exiting as I go into the woods. But here we got a bounce. I'll go over my trade earlier, but we dipped down significantly. We took out a lot of support levels on this dip, and we took out weeks of bullish action in just a few days. So that was a bit concerning, but the lower wicks do show the bulls buying the dip. We do have a resistance point, so the range on the daily to be watching is 16.5, and resistance is up at 235. So that's the current range to be watching. The hourly time frame is what I was using to do my trading, and I placed a bid right here and went to bed, and I placed it right off this support. I put it at 19.7, just above that support, and then I exited up here at 203 because I knew I was leaving and just wanted to be all back in. I guess I'm back in Bitcoin in that position, but just patiently waiting because I don't like this setup here. It's a descending triangle pattern right now, and not that it's a bearish pattern. It could break bearish, but it's just that I'm not going to be able to watch it, so I would rather just be safe and in cash until I'm ready to be back at it again and active. And this is a declining or a descending triangle pattern, and we can't really draw a clear downtrend resistance. Let's see if this one works better. And not even there. So I'm not even going to draw the downtrend resistance. Again, just use the price levels. So we have a clear base of support down at 19.5, and we have our lower highs. So we topped out here at 21, then we topped out here at 205, and now we're topping out at a lower high. And the way that it stands right now, the channel that I'd be watching would be 25 and 19.5, whichever breaks first. We either break the lower high pattern for the bulls, or we break the support line for the bears. And we have so many times where newer people to technical analysis will come in and say, well, which direction are we going to break? And I can't be clear enough that it doesn't matter. I don't know. And we just wait for the break, and then we make the entry. And if you're waiting for a bullish break to make your entry, you're profitable usually right at the get-go because the bull momentum is at your back because other traders are seeing that bullish break as well. And that's when the volume picks up, and that's when traders get in. So if you're in a position, yes, you want to try and get clues as to which is more likely to break. But if you're sitting cash and just patiently waiting, like right now, I wouldn't be stressing anything. I wouldn't be, trying to overanalyze anything. I'd just be patiently waiting and say, okay, if 205 is going to break, I'll get in. If not, I'm not going to get in. It's that simple. And I'm not going to sit here, staring at the screen forever because the pattern is clear where it has to break that level for me to have any interest to be looking bullish. If we were to dump down and the hourly RSI were to get oversold, then I would be interested on an oversold bounce. But until that happens, I'm just looking for a break of the lower high pattern before I get interested here. So that's what we've got here on all of these charts heading into this weekend. Again, the consolidation that is ongoing is healthy at this point for the bulls. It's just a question of as to whether or not we see a spike in bear volume and a break of some key supports that have been established. And if we don't see that, it will continue to be healthy, normal consolidation after the recovery that we did see. So that's a good sign for the bulls, but you want to have stop levels. You want to say, okay, if we break X level, I'm going to go back to all cash and try and buy back in lower. We had people that were able to rebuy 50% more Ethereum than they've ever had before because they got in on this bottom here and were able to ride that back up to the upside. So again, what I'm going to be watching for on Ethereum, because that is what I am most actively trading, is the higher low has been set. In order for the daily chart momentum to change, we have to pull back, set a higher low, and then set a higher high by breaking 324, let's call it. Let's round up. So 324, once that breaks, that will be momentum shifting back on the daily time frame to favor the bulls. And now that we're wrapping up the end of the week, that's a bullish candlestick on the weekly chart after the big pullback. Let's see what Bitcoin's weekly candlestick looks like. So the bulls are trying to establish some supports here, and it's going to be a very interesting weekend. We'll see how the holiday affects it. I don't think the holiday will have a significant effect. And actually, because of the holiday, and I'm not going to be doing stock stuff all early next week, I'm going to try and do a live webcam here. I've known people have been asking about how to set up trading view charts. I'll go over that, and I will go over tickers that you want to look at the end of the video. I'll come up with some more topics that I want to cover, but let's see when I want to do that. Maybe 4th of July. I don't have anything going on. Maybe Monday. Monday's a half day in the stock market. I'll keep everybody posted, but sometime early next week, I will do a live webinar just going over some stuff. And I encourage you all to check it out. And again, STEEMIT.com. Let's support that community as cryptocurrency supporters ourselves. And I appreciate you all watching. Hope you have a good weekend. We'll see you soon.